Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Oil Painting, Learning from the Masters. My name is Jason Meyer, and sitting right next to me is my lovely wife, Cindy,
Hi,
taking,
everybody.
taking care of everything behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, everywhere. So tonight's going to be a repeat of last week, since last week was such a wing it, since I lost all the data and the videos. We've redone the videos, and since I went a little long last week, this is going to be a little bit of a tighter show too. I am going to spend a few minutes at the end to answer some questions. We got emailed a couple of questions. Understandably, this is kind of a complex subject, so I think this was actually a good one to review and to do twice in a row. Okay, so we got a short little masters, then there's a demo, and a short student. The demo and the exercise are basically the same video tonight because we're going to just do one more layer on top of everything. So we'll have a few extra minutes at the end. If you do have questions or something, there should be time to handle all that. With that being said, appreciate everybody being here. Good to see everybody. Thanks for nice hat. There we go. I was wondering what that was. Appreciate that. Cindy got that for me. Wasn't that nice? So, all right. In the meantime, let's watch Old Masters, and then we'll be right back to get into the demo before too long. As we look at this painting, let's think about the big structure rather than the little details. So ultimately, this is just a light against the dark, with the lighter part of the light at the bottom. And then in the darker part is near the lightest light. Do you see that? So the whole thing's held by gray, and the light and the dark's in the middle. And then here again, we've got light running through the middle. Do you see the beautiful dance of light that goes through there? But that light only works with all of that dark holding it. And the donkeys are the darks and the trees. And then here, one of my favorite landscape painters, Clyde Aspaveg, uses a little bit of what we're learning to do. See how he's dividing the canvas? But it's not quite a straight rectangle, is it? Right? But it's a modified. And he changes each one as it goes back into space. All right, I hope you guys find that helpful, those outlining the old masters. It always really helped me to see when I was a student if somebody took the time to, hey, no, look here, and really point it out. And I do like to use the same paintings a few different times because I believe the good ones, first off, are worth looking at more than once. But more important than that, you'll experience it a little bit different each time. Before we've talked about it, after we've talked about it, with one set of music, with another set of music, it does really change the experience. And I think that's one of the gifts of art, is that it grows, it matures as you mature. And so it's a fun thing to do. All right, so we're going to get into our longest segment here. I believe I got this down to 12 minutes, maybe 14 minutes. So not too long, but this will be the demo. And what I'm doing on here, we'll talk about it after, is also going to be what I'd like you to do one more time this week. Or if you didn't get to it last week because you didn't get what was going on, let's make sure you get it this week so you can do it. All right, so we'll jump into the demo now. So let's talk about the visual power triangle. In the visual power triangle, we have the middle, and then we have two things. The tree could be one thing, and the ground could be the other thing. And then the middle in that painting was the sky at the horizon. And so far we've learned if we take each of our things and mix the middle into them, that they become visually weaker. And they also become closer to the middle. But what if we want to control the visual power between two things without them going back into distance? And it doesn't matter what the things is. It doesn't have to be tree and ground. It could be tree and near sky or anything else. The other thing we want to realize is the things we're talking about are actually piles of paint. Our tree is a pile of paint. So how do we treat these piles of paint to control the visual power? Well, let's see where they are on the color wheel. So the ground is a little bit brighter, closer to the outside, a more chroma, and the trees are closer to the middle. So we could send the trees closer to the middle or more to the other side, and the ground closer to the outside. Burnt umber for the trees, cad yellow for the ground. We'll make each of those respectively visually stronger in that relationship. But color's really three-dimensional, not two-dimensional. White's on top, black's on the bottom, in the middle. And then the colors go around the outside. So our ground is lighter than our trees. So if we want more visual power, ground lighter and trees darker. Right? If we want these visually weaker, we bring them closer together. We do that simply by mixing them into each other. And visually stronger, we send them in the opposite direction. So, what do we want visually stronger? Well, here the areas circled, we're going to make those areas a little visually stronger. But that implies that there's places we want visually weaker. In order to have visual strength, you need visual weakness. So one of the first things that I do is on things away from where I want to focus is by literally scratching with a sharp stick, I can soften those edges. By softening those edges, that decreases the visual power. And by decreasing the visual power there, it automatically increases the visual power where I want you to focus. After I've softened a few edges, again, I'll go back and I'll oil out just a little bit of medium or oil on here, not too thick. Any dry, dead spots, we want to liven them up with the oil. Then if we start with the dark, again, then I'll start around where I want the visual interest or the more focus to be. And I'll make my harder edges. With those sky holes rather than the outside of the tree. Then away from that, what I'm going to do is, again, try to quiet things down. Try to quiet things down. From there, we can go to the dark ground or the shadow on the ground. What I'm going to do this time, again, is try to give it a sense of grass and things growing in there. Okay, now this is the ground that I mixed up. Again, so it being slightly different, notice how I don't have to cover everything, right? Because it's close enough to what's there, but slightly different. It starts to add some depth and some interest if you leave a little space between. And again, with the cad red, that'll be the most, not the cad red, excuse me, cad yellow, to get us over to where we want to focus. We add a little middle, or in this case, the sky at the horizon, to the grass and light to send it back. So as we go back into space, we add the middle. Right? And the more we do that, the further back we go. Then you want to make sure that wherever you put those sky holes of that, it's in the same line as the grass with that value in color. Okay, so you would want to put it up to where the sky is. As you do your very last layer of ground, you want it to be very close to the middle so that it's very quiet. And then that middle I stick just a little bit above the horizon. And again, see how that sky then will go to where I want us to focus in the sky hole. And the same for the other side there. And let's look at our last focal point up there in the upper right hand corner. So it's nearer sky, so it's a little darker than our middle. And notice that I'm working on the sky holes right there next to that focal point. And then I'll even out and then spread that color across the sky, but only after I hit the areas I want to focus. And then again, here what I'm doing is I'm putting light on this side of the tree. That brings it closer to the sky, which makes that edge softer. Okay, and I can put that where I don't necessarily want you to focus, and then keep the shadow where I do want you to focus. And since this is a review, since last week was goof, I went ahead and did it one more time. So this will be really short, but let's take a look at what we did. So the middle sky is purple, the ground's got the cad yellow, the trees has got the yellow ochre. Okay, so we've got green, which is black and yellow, and then we add white to the lights. And we can use reds to modify, right? Which would be cad red and burnt umber. So here you see me oiling out again, prepping the surface. After our surface is prepped, we start with our dark and oil paint. We work from dark to light. And the dark is going to be the dark or the shadow of the tree. And again, I'll start around the focal point or where I want the focus to be. So we move into the dark of the grass. Again, I'm going to try to give the feeling of grass there as I work on those edges. Forgot to do it at the beginning. So at this point, I'll just use my stick to scratch in and loosen things up. Take focus away from areas where we do not need their focus to be. As I work into the light of the ground in this first layer, let's start right off to the side. Okay. Since that ended up being so dark, what I'm going to do is not be so heavy with it. Do it a little thinner. Even wipe it down. And so notice here on this end where I don't want you to be, how I almost use it as a glaze to quiet areas down. Okay, so this is actually the tougher skill, is quieting rather than making louder. But if we work with our yellow, because that will increase the visual power between the ground and the tree. And then I'm going to go back over again inside where I want the focal point. And then not repeat exactly what I did last time, but not go too far outside of it either, right? So we want to like add to what was there. Soft edge ties it down back into the middle. The top can have a hard edge on the ground and the grass. And scratching into things, again, just to kind of soften things up there a bit. So in the spirit of taking away as much as we put in, I'm going to go to the trees and light, put a little middle in there, because I'm going to the second bank of trees, so it's going to be a little further back in the atmosphere. And then, again, it's the taking away that happens to be the harder thing. So by doing that on that corner of the trees, it makes those outside in that corner less visually powerful. So that where we do want them to focus, it's easier for them to get there. And then again, scraping, softening those edges away from those centers of interest just adds to that a little bit. And even on my center of interest, if it's feeling too hard-edged, I'll do a little bit of that. The middle is the sky near the horizon. Again, we're going to be just above the horizon here, not right at the horizon. We want to start at our focal point. See how effective that is? Just really drawing your eye right there. That thicker paint, the hardest edges, the cleaner paint. And again, can I just do a little bit less this time? And I'm going to use this to even kind of glaze over those back trees so they go further back into space. This is becoming really effective. Can you guys see that? And we haven't done anything special. We've just repeated each of these steps several times. In the last two, along with depth, we thought about and created a focus. Right, so the sky is darker up close to us, right? Then it's lighter as it goes to the middle. Okay, this is one of the other focal points down into here. So I'm going to create some commotion there. And try not to go too far outside of that so that that one spot has more power. If it gets too big, the power loosens a bit. So in a very real sense, less becomes more. Less of it will bring you more visual power than more of it. Okay, I think by now you guys should have this. So I want you to give me, on your exercise, one more week of this. And let's see what you can do. Okay, did that register this time? Did it make more sense? Essentially what we want to do is we want to be able to go back into space, which means visually weaker. But then in those strips of the space, that artificial created space on the canvas, we want to tell the viewer either look here, or we don't want it all to be equal. We're creating areas of focus within that depth. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And those areas of focus are literally just more visual power. And we could use any tool we wanted to create that visual power. We can use edge, we can use color, we can use paint quality. We can also take all of those away. Okay, so the purpose of the whole course has been to shift what you're looking at and what you're looking for when you paint. And instead of looking at things, try to simply see the visual power of the paint on your canvas. And let's orchestrate that. And then if it looks like a thing on top of that, wow, you got a home run. Okay, so we're going to end here with a little tour of some of the student work. And after that, like I said, there'll be plenty of time for questions. I know we've had 1 or 2 questions through the email that I'm going to deal with. And if you have any others, stick them in here in the chat and we'll get to them. Okay. I would also like to know if this is registering with anybody. Did this make sense or was this a complete miss? Okay, this is a kind of a subtle point and it can be hard to make on this kind of time frame. So let me know. If we missed it, who knows? We'll see. Because after this week, I'm going to move on to our last subject as we wind down this episode, and that is going to be composition. Okay, so one more short video, and then we'll close out with some questions. Remembering where we started, let's take a tour of some of the work that we got done from this starting place. To me, it's amazing that we can start with rectangles and come up with landscapes. Now, if we looked at a reference, how would we take a reference and make it into that which we started with, the rectangles? Can you see how by simplifying, you can start to see and put the scene into something that's extremely manageable? Then your job as an artist is to shrink and grow and place this here and that there so that we come up with a good design. And that, my friends, will be the subject of the last 3 weeks of this YouTube series. Okay, so that is it for today. Over the email, though, let's see here. Okay, yeah, there was a question about color in 3-dimensional space. Those illustrations, although they're very, very effective, I didn't stress on putting those dots exactly where they go. The ground is more chroma than the trees, and the trees are darker than the ground. Okay? So that sets up a relationship, and basically what it is if you shorten the distance between that relationship, that's visually weaker. If we stretch the distance between that relationship, that's going to have more visual impact. Okay, it's really as simple as that. And then last week I said something that doesn't necessarily have to be a straight line. What I mean by that is it is more or less a straight line, but there's a little bit of play there, right? Wherever this dot at, you got a little bit of play, but you can't go this direction. You can go that direction a little bit, but you can go directly away from that other one quite a bit. Okay? Again, as you get more experienced, what happens is you develop a feel for that, and each of us have feelings that we prefer. Some of us prefer softer, quieter, easier feelings. Some of us want some staccato, something to look at. And then others are going to be in between. That's your voice, right? So even though you're using this method, you're having to use your judgment for how visually powerful, how visually weak. Okay? Did I answer all that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Did we have any other questions? I don't see any up here.
Katie asked a question.
Okay.
And she said, "Do you soften with the edges both wet and or dry?"
That's right. So we had another question that says, "Do you soften edges wet or dry?" I do both. I do both. The more ways you kind of do stuff, the more visually interesting it is. So just like you can soften an edge by softening this, when the paint's wet, you can kind of mash it together. That'll soften it. If the paint's dry, you can scratch through it. You can scratch through it if it's wet too, and that can soften it up. Also, if you have, let's say you have blue here running into a red, you can take a spot of blue and stick it in your red, inside the red, a little bit away from, that will also soften this edge. The bottom line is there's like 1,000 ways to do all of these things. How you choose to do them is going to make you the artist that you are. So what I've attempted here by creating, as far as I know, created this term visual power. It's a way of looking at the canvas and receiving it without going through the list of edge, chroma, color, this. Eventually you need a system that's simple enough that you can let go of those concepts and just see it as stronger or weaker. And that's how you'll be able to get the delicacy that you want and the subtlety that you want. And your point will come across better as well. I hope that made sense. Go ahead.
Karen had one more thing.
Karen, okay, let's see what that is. Is your lightest light still the heaviest paint even in the distance? Yes, is the short answer. But again, you don't have to be. The reason the lightest is the heaviest is it's kind of the loudest, right? It makes the most visual impact. And we exaggerate that by also giving it thick paint, right? Because you wouldn't want to put thick paint in places where you'd want it to be the quietest. And so although it's kind of hard for the brain to comprehend, that thick paint can still read distant. Now, if that thick paint is pure white, it's not going to quite read distance because where's the atmosphere? So it's yes with some caveats. I hope that makes sense. By the way, one of the reasons it's a good idea to bring that brightest bright in the sky just above the horizon, that if you put really thick paint there at the horizon, it's going to cause a hard edge between the land and the sky. And that's just a little too divisive. Okay? It takes too much unity out of things. And as you get better, you'll decide the degree of division and the degree of unity that you want. And that really is the bigger question. And like I've said all along, the hard part is the measure, is how much. How much do you do? Okay? But at the same time, that's a question only you can answer, right? I can help show you how you can accomplish some of these things, but in the end, the judgment whether it's good or not, whether those are good values, whether those are good edges, whether those are good shapes on your paintings must come from you, right? So my teaching's moving much more to helping you guys make the decisions you need to make based on what you see and how you feel about it. And I believe in that way you guys will grow to be more fuller, more independent artists. Okay? That makes sense. Thank you so much. Let's see, what was this right here? This hardest area to follow was paint. Yeah, so the last thing here, somebody said the hardest thing to follow was the paint mixing. And I agree. But what I hope you got out of this was, did you see for the ground and the trees, I literally used a different paint. In other words, the ground I used cad yellow light, and the trees I used yellow ochre to both make green. But by keeping the piles of paint that I mixed together different, it assures that my trees and my ground will be different. And since those are green, if I switch my sky to purple, then that's a color scheme decision. And so through these courses, what I've done is I've made those decisions for you so that I could show you other things. Okay? My hope is through this style of teaching that after this, the next course I'm going to be teaching, it'll be an in-person course, but it's actually going to be an introduction to oils. So I'm going to try to start at the very beginning with this, and then we'll work back up. Okay, I think I've probably gone on long enough. It looks like it's past 7:30. I hope all those answers made sense and helped you push forward. Again, we've got 3 more weeks. I hope you guys can hang with me. And then you won't see me for a little while, at least here on YouTube. But I really believe that it could benefit everybody who's interested to go back through this and see this again. Because this is strong fundamental things that you can apply to your painting no matter what your genre is. Okay? All right, guys. Really appreciate you guys. Love you. Please make sure to give us a thumb up. Looks like somebody gave us a thumbs down tonight. I hope that was an accident. But anyway, hopefully they just moved on if it wasn't. If you really liked us, give us a subscription. If you completely loved us and you want to give a little more, you're welcome to donate a little bit to help the future of these programs. In the meantime, everybody have a good week. If you're able, really give this a go and send in what you got. You know, I know a few of you are getting it, and that's okay, but I'm also concerned about those of you who just aren't quite getting it, right? If I can help you guys over the finish line, that would be cool too. All right, until next week, paint, paint, paint. Have a good time. We love you. Let Cindy say goodbye here.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, guys.